Hey everyone, Jamie Pate here. Welcome so much to this video. And if you're like me, you have a bunch of cards and tags to make for this holiday season. For one reason or another, there is something to be handmade to give to somebody else. Well, I am totally here for it. And today I want to share one of several ideas I have going on in my brain. Let's get to it right now. To get started, I like to gather my supplies first. So, of course, I've done just that here for you. Let me talk about them for a minute. I have here my card bases, of course, that I've already scored and cut. And this is Scrapbook.com's ultra thick cardstock. It has been trimmed 4.5 inches to 8.5 inches, and I've already scored it in the middle. So I have a couple of those ready to go. And of course, I have a card background, and the card background is going to be utilized with the winter florals die, so that will be put to use here, and I'm going to show you how we're going to make that work in a little bit different way. I have the mixed metals here that I want to use for a background layer, and then next I have the Christmas stitched border strips. And not only do I have the dies in here, but I also have some of the paper that I previously cut at another time, so I do that quite often. And the thing about these particular dies, they have an embossed etching in them. And so when you cut them with your cutting machine, I'm using the Spellbinders piece 6 here, it's ideal to use the magic mat, because when you cut against the magic mat, it's going to make for a really great embossed look on your stitched border. So that's a little tip for you there. I'm going to go ahead and pick out my particular paper for today's project, and it is this sort of a, whoops, I'm going to pull a whole bunch out. How about that? It's sort of this starburst kind of a look, so I'm going to set that aside. And so that's all ready to go. I have here in this storage envelope the Snowflake dies, gorgeous, beautiful, intricate dies. There's a set of 6, but wait, there's more. On the back side, I have some pre-cut Snowflake dies, because here's my motto, which I meant to mention earlier. If you're going to cut one die, cut several. Then they're just on the ready, and I'm for sure going to be using these today as well. Now, inside that winter floral die is a bunch of negatives that are part of the offcuts, and I'm going to be using these today. This is from another project, and these are gray, but these are going to come in handy. Of course, I have adhesives, and I'll just chat about everything else as we go along. So to start off, I have matted the mixed metals in the silver, and that piece is about 4.25 wide by 4-ish, and it is matted to the cardstock base. So you see here that I've already die cut the Winter Florals slimline die on the ultra thick paper. And this was a little bit different thing I was going to do. I'm bringing it in here. I'm going to trim it at 4 inches, and I'm kind of very gingerly going through to make my cuts, and I'm actually going to end up needing to clean that up a little bit with my scissors. So that's what's going to take place. I think I was just being a little too gentle taking it through the trimmer. But here I am going to then remove basically the frame on this die, and I want the edges to be open. I just thought that would give this a very, what shall we call it, an ethereal look. And so that's what I'm going to finish up doing here, is basically removing the frame on this background. So then next, I'm just kind of eyeballing how I want that to fit. And of course, it needs to be adhered down. Am I correct? So I'm grabbing the mother of all adhesive rolls, and that is that 2-inch double-sided foam adhesive. I love this stuff. Not only does it have great adhesion, but I can cut it to any size I want and customize it, especially to this kind of intricate background. So you can see I'm just sort of sizing up my spaces, my white spaces, so that I can add adhesive so that it doesn't show on the other side. And then I am creating this very floaty kind of technique on this particular card. Now, I will say that I probably should have come in and added a little bit more of the adhesive on the edges, but I went in after I was done with the card and kind of added a few pieces here and there, and it was easy enough to do. But just a little note, probably could have had a little bit more of the foam tape instead of just right in the center. So remember to take your sticker back off, and then I'm just going to now center and align this to my card base, and I'm pretty happy with how that looks. So next, I'm going to then go back to the pre-cut stitched borders, and I'm kind of eyeballing the cut here, which is fine. And so once this is trimmed down, this is another thing. You can do a bunch of these at one time, right? So once it's trimmed down, then I'm grabbing the 1/4 inch double-sided adhesive. I just want to make sure that there is really good adhesion to my floaty background. So the 1/4 inch double-sided, it is. So I'm going to get that in place here. And it's interesting, I don't usually go right into the center, and I think I just decided the center it is. So this is centered pretty much on the card background, and I'm just getting it all kind of fidgeted and in place there. So now that's where we're at so far with all that texture. It's just so beautiful. Back to the snowflakes, just kind of making a decision here which one I wanted to use, and I went for the biggest one. And again, grabbing the double-sided foam adhesive and cutting a piece that's going to go into the very center back of my snowflake. So yes, it is going to show through on the other side. But wait, we're not done yet. We're going to cover that all up to be sure. So I am going to then give this anchor on that bluish greenish little strip there. And then I'm going up and just kind of giving a little bit more texture to the snowflake itself and just kind of lifting it here and there gently. Do that gently. So remember those negatives from the winter florals that I die cut in another project? Well, I am looking for a couple of pieces and making a decision here how I'm going to cluster them. Yep, you guessed it, right there in the middle of that snowflake. I decided to go for stems. Now, in this technique, you really only need a little bit of glue at the end of the stem. Not much more is needed than that. So I'm just going to take a few minutes here and sort of fiddle with my stems, getting them in place. But even though that foam adhesive is kind of showing through, I just wanted to make sure that these stems were going to stay where I place them. So that was the reason for the smart glue. And then that stem there is too long, and we're all about customizing our dies, right? We've already done it once today. And so something's too long, just give it a good little trim, tear off its stem if it needs to. And so I'm getting those all in place. I'm going to show you what that looks like, and I'm loving it. Okay, so at this point, I need a little sentiment. I'm using the word Fetty Fa La La stamps, and I stamped out a 'Tis the Season, and I'm just trimming it really thin. So once I get it trimmed as thin as I can, I'm going to then trim the end off. It's a little long, and I'm going to then create a V-notch at the very end. I love this banner look. This is kind of a go-to for me when I'm adding sentiments to cards. I love this kind of look. So then I'm sort of using my fingernail here and giving it a little crease. I'm going to fold that under, and before I add any adhesive, I've grabbed this Altenew silver thread, and I'm going to begin to tie a bow around it. First though, yes, you guessed it, we're grabbing the 2-inch foam adhesive yet again. I'm trimming it really thin, and I'm actually not going to use that long of a piece. But what I want to do is I want to lay my fold down in the back kind of flat, and then also have adhesive to then layer it on the card base itself. So that's what's happening here. And I'm going to trim off that extra long piece. And then after that, I'll finish my bow. And that looks like it's just kind of going to be tied on to our card front. So this is kind of fun. I'm always messing with my bows. What do you know? So here we go. I already have the foam adhesive in place, and it's going to cover up all the stems. You knew that was coming, didn't you? So that's how we add all these layers and textures to a seasonal card for this holiday or any lovely holiday.